Why do we seek comfort? In the very things that keep us asleep. Every evening, billions of eyes flicker under the glow of screens, phones, TVs, tablets, not as a luxury, but as a ritual, a silent escape from the unbearable weight of modern life. In those pixels, we are offered laughter, romance, danger, adventure, all without consequence, all without real change. But beneath the laughter-track sitcoms and the infinite scroll, there is a quiet violence. Not the kind that draws blood, but the kind that dulls the spirit. A subtle erosion of will, of time, of thought. Entertainment, once a celebration of human creativity, has been weaponized into a tool of sedation. We're not watching for fun. We're watching to forget. Forget the unpaid bills. Forget the 9-to-5 grind that eats our weeks like fire eats wood. Forget that our dreams now come with subscriptions and ads. It's not that we've chosen this. It's that this was chosen for us. A system where pleasure is manufactured not to fulfill, but to distract. Just enough stimulation to stop us from questioning why we're exhausted, why we're lonely, why we feel trapped in a world that never asked who we are, only what we produce. The new opium does not numb with chemicals. It numbs with content. And like any opiate, it's given freely, until you need it to function, until silence feels wrong, until presence becomes unbearable. A man sits in a dark room scrolling endlessly, eyes vacant. The world is burning, but he's watching a cooking video. Somewhere deep inside, he knows. But the algorithm has already tucked him in, whispering, "Don't worry, everything is fine." Is it? We are not free, we are entertained. Who decides what we watch and why? Entertainment today isn't created for meaning, it's manufactured for profit. Behind every series, every viral trend, every carefully crafted cliffhanger, lies a complex machinery designed to maximize one thing: your attention, not your joy, not your growth, just your watch time. Streaming platforms don't sell stories. They sell your gaze to advertisers, to investors, to shareholders. And just like a factory needs raw material, the digital economy needs something more intimate: your time, your dopamine, your unconscious surrender. In the past, the factory exploited your body. Now the platform exploits your mind, and yet it feels harmless, safe, entertaining, because it's wrapped in color, in sound, in characters we grow to love. It feels like connection, but it's control. It feels like freedom, but it's design. Every scroll, every autoplay, every curated recommendation is a silent act of manipulation. You think you're choosing what to watch, but it's already been chosen to keep you quiet. We must ask, why are the most radical, subversive, or intellectually challenging stories so rare? Why are the messages always recycled, the stakes always personal, never structural? Why is suffering turned into spectacle, but never into revolt? Because true awareness is unprofitable, because an awake population doesn't binge, because a questioning mind doesn't buy. Imagine a man in a control room surrounded by hundreds of glowing screens. He presses buttons, adjusts sliders. Laughter here, suspense there, a twist, a love triangle. Outside, millions of people laugh and cry on cue, never knowing they're being choreographed. Marx once said, "The ruling ideas of each age have ever been the ideas of its ruling class." And today, those ideas wear makeup, tell jokes, and beg you to click next episode. So we must ask again, are we being entertained, or are we being managed? Have you ever felt empty, even while being entertained? There's a particular kind of silence that follows a binge-watch session, a quiet that doesn't soothe. It haunts. The story ends, the screen goes dark, and suddenly, reality returns. The room is still small, the job is still pointless, the loneliness still echoes. In that moment, something breaks. Not loudly, just a quiet crack in the mirror of illusion. You were just fed hours of emotions, but none of them were yours. Laughter that wasn't real, love that wasn't lived, purpose that wasn't chosen. And yet you felt it, deeply. So deeply that it distracted you from your own numbness. That is the genius of entertainment under capitalism. It simulates life so convincingly that you forget how lifeless your own has become. And while you laugh at jokes written by corporate teams, your body slumps a little lower on the couch. Your eyes dry, your spine curves, your agency dissolves. Alienation doesn't always look like a man screaming at a machine. Sometimes it looks like someone scrolling through 400 options on Netflix and feeling nothing. It's the disconnect between what you need, intimacy, meaning, truth, and what you're given, spectacle, consumption, noise. A woman sits on her bed, watching a romantic drama. Her eyes water, but not for the characters. She doesn't even know their names. Her tears are for a life she barely remembers wanting. For the feeling of being seen, for the ache of being alive in a world that only values attention if it can be monetized. Entertainment promises relief, but what it delivers is postponement, of pain, of rebellion, of awakening. And in that delay, the system thrives. As Marx warned, man is at last compelled to face with sober senses his real conditions of life and his relations with his kind. But how can we face anything when we are endlessly distracted? So the question becomes, how long can we substitute stimulation for meaning before we forget the difference? What if your freedom was just a well-designed menu? Every time you open a streaming service, it greets you like an old friend, recommended for you. Because you watched top picks. But the question is never what do you want to feel? It's how do we keep you here longer? This isn't freedom. It's behavioral engineering. You are not navigating the content. The content is navigating you. Behind every choice is an algorithm, a quiet tyrant that studies you, learns your rhythms, predicts your impulses. It knows when you're most tired, when you're most lonely, when you're most likely to click play, and it offers just enough illusion of control to keep you compliant. And so, the very act of relaxing becomes labor, not for you, but for the system. Your choices generate data. Your preferences become product. You watch, and they watch you back. We call this entertainment. But it's a transaction where only one side profits. Even genres reflect the dominant order. The hero's journey reinforces individualism. Rom-coms teach that love fixes everything, as long as you're attractive. Dystopias show rebellion, only to end in tragic failure, a warning, not a blueprint. This is not by accident. It is ideological. The stories you consume are curated to fit within the parameters of capitalism. Even when they critique the system, they rarely propose an alternative, because true alternatives are dangerous, unmarketable, unsellable. A teenager watches a film about revolution. She feels inspired, moved, but before she can act, the credits roll, and autoplay begins. A comedy starts. Her mood shifts. The fire cools. The moment passes. This is how the system absorbs its threats. It packages dissent, profits from it, then neutralizes it. As Marx said, the ideas of the ruling class are in every epoch the ruling ideas. And today, those ideas wear HD resolution, surround sound, and 5-star ratings. So ask yourself, if the system lets you watch it fall apart, but never change it, is that still freedom? Why do we turn to distraction when what we really need is rest? After 10 hours under fluorescent lights, after being spoken to like a number, after surviving traffic, bills, and the quiet humiliation of being invisible, we come home, not to peace, not to healing, but to content. We don't watch because we're bored. We watch because we're broken. Entertainment has become the bandage for a wound it helps sustain. We are tired, so we consume. We are lonely, so we scroll. We are overwhelmed, so we numb. But in doing so, we deepen the very fatigue we seek to escape. This is not failure, it is design. Capitalism extracts your energy during the day and sells you distraction at night. It takes your labor, then sells you relief in high definition. And the worst part? You pay for both, with your time, your focus, your soul. A man sits in a recliner. His face is slack, The TV flashes before him like a second sun. In one hand, his remote. In the other, his phone. Neither brings joy. Both bring silence he used to dream. Now he binges. This is the new assembly line, not of cars, but of attention. Not of products, but of personalities, jokes, sound bites, content creators. You don't clock in, but you're still working. For clicks, for metrics, for someone else's profit. Even rest has been privatized. Sleep trackers, wellness apps, ASMR videos with ads. Marx spoke of surplus value, the profit wrung from your labor. But today there is also surplus submission, the quiet obedience of a population too tired to resist. So we must ask, when did rest become consumption? When did comfort become currency? And what would it take to reclaim the night as ours again? What if your dreams, Eddie, were planted in you? Every story we consume shapes what we believe is possible. Who deserves love? What success looks like? What justice means? And more importantly, who wins? Who loses? Who gets to speak? This isn't storytelling. It's programming. A generation raised on superhero films begins to believe that salvation comes from individuals, not movements. That justice is served by punching, not organizing. That power, though corrupt, is ultimately necessary, as long as it's in the right hands. The oppressed are taught to wait for a savior, never to become one. And when representation does appear, women, people of color, queer characters, it is often without the systems that oppress them. Racism with no capitalism, misogyny with no patriarchy, a rainbow-colored cage. Because the goal is not liberation. The goal is to appease, to soothe, to sell. A young black girl sees herself in a movie for the first time. She smiles, but the character is wealthy, isolated, disconnected from struggle. It feels like victory, but only within the rules of a game she never designed. A subtle whisper echoes, "You can be free, but only if you play our way." Entertainment becomes a mirror, but a funhouse one. It reflects your face but distorts your reality. It promises inclusion while preserving the system. As Marx warned, the ruling class presents its interest as the common interest. And in today's world, that interest is sold as inspiration, as aspiration, as content. So we must ask, whose dreams are we dreaming? And what would we see if the screen ever went dark long enough to remember our own? What if the screen was just a prettier prison? There is a moment, brief, almost imperceptible. When the show ends, the autoplay stops and you feel it. A pulse, a disturbance, a thought that says, "This isn't enough." And then, it's gone, silenced by a trailer, a notification, a new release. Because the system has learned that rebellion doesn't start with rage. It starts with silence, with reflection, with boredom. So boredom must be killed, at any cost. Noise is the new police. Endless podcasts, daily vlogs, 30-second reels, memes, lives, streams, all designed not to entertain but to occupy, to fill the space where questions might grow. We are no longer chained by force, we are chained by engagement. It is the illusion of fullness, a life packed with pixels, voices, stimulation, but underneath, hollow, directionless, numb. We know everything about celebrities, but nothing about our neighbors. We know every plot twist, but not how our food is made, or where our wages go, or who owns the screen we stare into. A young man watches a stand-up comedy special that mocks capitalism. The audience laughs, he feels woke, but then it ends, and nothing changes. Because laughter has become anesthesia, irony has become armor, and critique just another genre. The system doesn't fear being criticized, it fears being turned off. As Marx said, the philosophers have only interpreted the world. The point, however, is to change it. And yet we are taught to interpret endlessly, to comment, review, react, while remaining passive. So ask yourself, is your attention yours? Or has it been leased out, monetized, and sold back to you as entertainment? The cage isn't locked, but it is comfortable, and it laughs with you, so you never think to leave. What remains when the screen finally turns off? No laugh track, no music swell, just you and the quiet. And in that quiet, something unfamiliar stirs. Not sadness, not anger. Something older, something buried. Will to remember, will to question, will to live beyond the script written for you. Because the truth is, they don't fear your opinions. They fear your clarity. They fear that you might stop watching and start seeing. Seeing the stolen hours, seeing the invisible labor behind every free video, seeing how much of your inner world has been rented out to narratives that serve someone else's empire. You were never just a viewer. You were always a vessel. And now the vessel remembers. A woman walks outside for the first time without her headphones. The world is louder, messier, more human. She notices a neighbor crying on the steps. She notices her own hands trembling. She notices that silence isn't absence. It's presence, raw and honest. This is how it begins. Not with revolution on the streets, but with revolution in the mind. When you reclaim your thoughts, your boredom, your hunger for something real. When you start creating instead of consuming, asking instead of accepting, being instead of performing. As Karl Marx wrote, and as we now truly feel, the emancipation of the working class must be the act of the working class itself, not of heroes, not of networks, not of curated stories, but of people, awake together, unplugged. So before the next video starts, before the screen lights up again, ask yourself, what was stolen from you in exchange for all this entertainment? Have you ever wondered why silence feels so rare? Why your thoughts only surface once the noise ends? Maybe the real rebellion isn't to fight, maybe it's to listen, to yourself, to others, to the truth that flickers behind the spectacle. If this video stirred something inside you, drop a comment. Let's not just watch, let's talk. If you want to help us keep the light on, so this space of reflection can continue, consider leaving a super thanks. Every act of support is a crack in the machine. And if you're ready to go deeper, subscribe and join us in the next video. Because the screen may go dark, but your awakening has only just begun.